one of the best inventions ever, and probably invented in Norway, I think, actually, or someplace like that. Like I said, I think it's an Irishman. I'm not really sure, but probably some Japanese and Chinese. And like I said, the Irishmen have a lot to be proud of. Like mining's in in their blood. You know, an Irishman is like they all say Belfast and this and that and all that. They don't know. Irishmen have been miners for hundreds of years. They've been down to the end of the Cape, mining down there, and they've been, you know, mining and Irish, and Irish is like, you know, they go hand in hand kind of thing. So, anyway, also, I mean, Chinese are kind of getting into it and kind of like they're starting to do it a lot. They've done it in the past, like thousands of years ago, or whatever. You know, the old big, they used to use big logs and spikes and go ram it into the rock, and that was China and stuff like that, and they did that, and that worked pretty good for them, and stuff like that. And there's also my steam drill, my steam drills, which is basically like a big steam thing and a big steam engine, and I did that. That's where all my money comes from, is basically the steam drills, basically, and you know, the big old steam engines. And there was this big thing, and it would, you know, it was like two hammers, like a. They started out just being like two pickaxe, you know, a pickaxe on one side, on each side, like a metal pickaxe, basically, and a thing, and it would just come around, go whack, and then fold, and then whack, and then fold. And they built this thing where it spins a drum. I think there's like a impeller or something in there, and they run the steam through it, and it spins, and the steam comes through, goes around the impeller, and then back down, and then goes out, and that turns the shaft. And on the end of the shaft are these hammers that swing around. You know, it's like a T-shaped hammer, and it goes whack, and then it, you know, has a pivot point, so it can pivot, so it goes down. So it's like just like a human hand, like a person hitting a rock face, basically, where it swings around and goes whack, and then it folds and goes down, and you can really get into the rock that way. It's like an automated hammer set. Anyway, that was done around 1500 or 1700, and that was my invention, or one of my inventions. Basically, was like a pickaxe on a thing, and whack, and then down. That was one of mine. Anyway, one of the more recent inventions, though, is a pneumatic hammer that can push into a wall and kind of vibrates and turn at the same time. And that was somewhere around Norway or somewhere around there. The inventors came up with this way of this thing, it ram, and it pushes in, and then there's this shaft which turns, so it applies pressure, and it flies, you know, it hits the rock, and it turns all at the same time, and it does like a turning thing. So it's pushing and beating a little bit and turning, and that's one of the newest things. Probably around 1800 or so is when they invented that, for basically going into rock faces. So it has a ram, basically, and it goes through here, and there's like a tube in it, and then it's got this thing on the back that kind of beats on it. I forget how it works, but it kind of beats on it, and it kind of beats and turns too, all at the same time. And that was a huge breakthrough, at least for personal thing. And they might have done a steam one and then done, because a lot of the stuff they took a look at my German patents, and they were like, hey, wait a minute, I think we can convert this over to hydraulic, because I did all this weird stuff with steam and stuff like that. And then the hydraulics and the hydraulic motors come along, and so they actually whip out my old patent books, and they start going through them, and they start realizing they did this all with steam. And they start thinking, you know, we could just use oil. Yeah, it'd be the same thing, only, you know, because I have all these complicated patents for all this really complicated stuff, like beating into walls and like doing that kind of stuff. I mean, we did it with steam, basically, long time ago. So I have all these patents which are in my name, Lucifer Starr, or Brian, and basically there's all these steam patents, and because I'm like the patent king, like I spent a huge amount of money, like millions of dollars, like thousands of gold, basically, and I had all these patents for my steam stuff. And so a bunch of the boys, or a bunch of people, basically start going through my books, and they start realizing that, you know, these patents can be converted over to hydraulic pretty easily. You know, it's just, you know, in the old steam days, you'd have this great big motor and this great big thing and this great big that and this great big this, and then you'd have steam doing it, you know. But nowadays we use oil, so they can make it smaller. So now you get these little guys that are doing this stuff, and it's a lot smaller. So my mining in Norway and all that other stuff, like I say, like Panama Canal and all those other stuff, I use these great big huge steam engines, and they're like the size of houses and like huge stuff and stuff like that, you know, and to do this mining, you know, and that's what I use, you know, the kind of stuff that you got to use. You got to build a railway just to move it. It's like, yeah, well, it's great, but you have to build a railway just to move it. It's like, yeah, my stuff's pretty big. Yeah, you know, back in the old days, you know, everything was moved by rail. You know, you'd build 2 railways all the time. You know, that's why we use the closed-in rail, actually, because there's going to be 2 of them. You know, that's why a lot of people look at my old little single railways, the little narrow gauge, and they say, well, you know, blah, blah. It's like, no. That's just one side. This is the other side. Yeah. That's just the one side. There's the other side. I mean, some of my things are like 300 feet straight up and then back down. And then this great big steel thing that moves on a thing. And it's like one little railway over here and one little railway over here. And there's like a little hill in between. And you're like, well, yeah, I guess they went this and did that. It's like, no, that's just one side. 500 feet that way, there's another one. You know, and they moved it like that. And then there was something in between that they moved. It's like, yeah. Well, we had these great big things that go, you know, big old steam thing where it's like 2 steam trains on this thing, and it like scoops out the ground. Where you have 2 big boilers up there and a feeder, you know, and this thing's moving up this valley, and it's like, you know, and they have it on the train railways where it's like, yeah, it's starting to sink into the ground like it's mush, but it's not. We know it's hard, but it's, you know, if you're not on rock on these things, like some of these things are so heavy that if you're not actually on the rock itself, they'll sink into the ground because they're like the weight of the Titanic. Some of them are like, yeah, it's like 1/3 of the Titanic weight. It's like, you know, it's this great big thing. And it's like going along, but you know, they just do it on the rock, you know, and stuff like that. So those great big machines existed in the way past, and we used to use them to dig. Anyway, so more recently, I'm doing like the Panama Canal, and like I say, in the old days, you know, you'd have like some of those things are like the size of houses, you know, or like small buildings with big T's on the end. It's like, and it like thud, and it's just like blam, you know, like this giant pickaxe going into a mountain. Just, you know, like these things are like the size of literally like the Titanic, only lighter. And it has like a bit on the end, and it's just like, and it just like going through this thing. And on the other side, you have like practically could have a smelting facility right inside of it, almost. Like some of these things are like huge. Anyway, most people say, yeah, nah, that didn't exist. Like, yeah, there's photographs of them. These great big huge things that they're like 300 feet across, you know, and skeletons basically. And then you have these little narrow gauge railways, and then you have this great big, you know, steam turbine that's like whack. And then like 4 big huge hammers, so just bam, you know. I mean, we used to do things big. Anyway, that's how I get, and eventually I downsize and go to Norway and stuff. Like everything nowadays is all small. But no, in the old days, yeah, we used to do it big, like the hammers the size of garages and stuff. You know, where it's like just spinning around and going, you know, where we actually have to do it thing, and where it's like, guys, get back, you got to be at least 500 feet back if that thing breaks off, you know, because sometimes the hammers would break off and they'd go flying, and then it's like it's like 800 tons fall on you. 100, like it's like 5 tons really, or no, probably 30, 40 tons of metal, just, you know. That's how they used to do it back in the old days, you know, with the gold cast iron and stuff. They used to make up for in bulk, you know, because there's balanced, you know, if you have 2 of these things, it's balanced, so it just turns. So then it's just a point load, and then you just swinging, you know, like a video game or something, you know, just going around, going bam, bam, and it's just driving into that rock, into the dirt, and just, and then you have a little scooper thing behind it, scooping it all up, and it goes to a conveyor belt and it goes out, and then you have the train cars on the other side picking it up and taking it down to the smelter. And that's how we used to do it. We used to go through mountains all the time. So nowadays we go a little bit through the mountain. Anyway, it's like in the old days we used to really move stuff, like, you know, like 1/2 mile wide bucket. Yeah, how we did everything.